Many former Disney employees went on to form smaller studios, allowing for diversity in a market controlled by a few major players. The most influential of these was United Productions of America. The company was formed by Dave Hilberman, Zach Schwartz, and Stephen Bossestow, and quickly signed a contract with Columbia for distribution. UPA's first assignment was to bring Columbia's dimmed stars, the Fox and the Crow, back to life. They applied their unique style to the cliché characters, and for their efforts were nominated for 2 Academy Awards. Columbia was pleased and allowed UPA to create a new original cartoon series. The result was a nearsighted, grumpy old man named Magoo. Magoo was a hit and went on to earn 2 Academy Awards for UPA in 1953 and 1955. UPA became known and praised for the lack of realism in their pictures. Their flat, stylized approach won multiple Academy Awards, including one for a film about a boy that couldn't speak, titled Gerald McBoing Boing. By the early 1960s, most of UPA's original creative talent had left, and by the time Steve Bossestow sold the company, it was in financial ruins. Eventually, the new owner gave up animation for good. If UPA was the avant-garde animation of the 1950s, Warner Brothers was the slapstick comedy. The type of entertainment that Disney tried to avoid with Snow White, funny gags, and visual tricks, was the quintessential Warner Brothers cartoon.
You thought I was going to say, son of a bitch, didn't you?
Although Disney's short films dominated the 1930s, he focused his attention on feature films after the success of Snow White. A new cast of characters took the spotlight of short theatrical animation. Bugs Bunny, Porky Pig, Daffy Duck, Elmer Fudd, and Tweety. The Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies series were originally produced by Leon Schlesinger for Warner Brothers Studio. In the early 1930s, Looney Tunes was devoted to recurring characters, while Merry Melodies featured a new character every episode. Until 1935, the Merry Melodies shorts would end with instead of the more well-known catchphrase, "That's all, folks." By the late 1930s, the Looney Tunes characters started appearing regularly in Merry Melodies, and by 1940, the two series were essentially the same thing. Schlesinger hired former Disney artists Hugh Harman and Rudolph Ising to make the cartoons, but soon after, the artists parted ways with Schlesinger to team up with MGM. Schlesinger went through a handful of cartoon directors before hiring Fritz Freleng and Tex Avery, the 2 men responsible for creating most of the Looney Tunes' original stars. In 1944, Schlesinger sold his company to Warner Brothers, and an in-house animation studio was formed to produce the 2 series. A fresh edition of popular characters were introduced by Freleng and new directors Chuck Jones and Robert Clampett. Yosemite Sam, Foghorn Leghorn, the Roadrunner, Wile E. Coyote, Sylvester, Speedy Gonzales, and Pepe Le Pew graced silver screens across America. Even minor characters such as the Tasmanian Devil and Marvin the Martian became well known. After Selzer retired in 1957, John Burton took over. Under Burton, Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies branched out into network television, first as the Bugs Bunny Show, and then later as syndicated reruns on various networks. In 1969, both series ended their nearly 4-decade-long theatrical runs, resigning to cable television where they can still be viewed today. During the golden age of Warner Brothers cartoons, the studio regularly exchanged talent with another major studio, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. It was at this point that MGM hired the Harman-Ising team, who had recently left Leon Schlesinger. Harman and Ising created Happy Harmonies, a series intended to rival Disney's Silly Symphonies and Warner's Merry Melodies. The series regularly went over budget, and the duo of animators paid no attention to MGM's requests to cut costs. In an act of retaliation, MGM formed an in-house animation studio and hired away most of Harman and Ising's talent, effectively putting their company out of business. A little over a year later, the studio would rehire Harman and Ising, and they continued to produce MGM cartoons for 2 more years. It was during this time that Harmon directed Peace on Earth, a somber cartoon that imagined a post-apocalyptic Earth without humans.
There ain't no men in the world no more, sonnies. No more men. But as I remember the critters, they was like monsters. They wore great big iron pots on their heads. They walked on their hind legs, and they carried terrible-looking shooting irons with knives on the end of them.
The release of the short coincided with the start of World War II, and it was nominated for an Oscar as well as a Nobel Peace Prize. Among the MGM staff were two young animators named Joseph Barbera and William Hanna. The two artists teamed up to direct Puss Gets the Boot, a cartoon featuring a cat and mouse that would eventually be named Tom and Jerry. The animated duo quickly became MGM's most valuable property, and they were nominated for 12 Academy Awards. Hanna-Barbera formed a side venture while working at MGM called HB Enterprises. They produced commercials and title sequences for live-action TV shows, including those for I Love Lucy. When MGM halted animation production in 1957, Hanna-Barbera made HB Enterprises their full-time job, hiring many of the artists laid off by MGM. The team focused their attention on made-for-TV animation and had their first commercial success with the Huckleberry Hound show. In 1959, HB Enterprises continued its gain in popularity and was renamed Hanna-Barbera Productions. Shortly thereafter, Hanna-Barbera created one of their most popular and memorable series, The Flintstones. The studio became the first to make an animated series exclusively for release on television. Before the mid-1960s, most animated shorts on TV were reruns of theatrical animation. Cartoons slowly became pigeonholed as children's entertainment, and less attention was paid to quality. Ironically, as Hanna-Barbera became more and more successful, the quality of American cartoons steadily declined. Hanna-Barbera produced many memorable series in the years that followed, including The Jetsons, The Yogi Bear Show, Scooby-Doo, an animated version of the Fantastic Four, The Addams Family, and The Smurfs. Eventually, Hanna-Barbera would evolve into the contemporary TV station Cartoon Network. However, it was clear by 1970 that the golden age of American animation was coming to an end. The popularity of television meant less people were going to the theaters, and in order to cut their losses, theater owners stopped showing animated shorts alongside feature films. The medium of television ultimately meant smaller budgets for longer half-hour cartoons. After 7 decades of constant improvement and innovation, the heyday of animation had come to a close.